This guest wasn't even a professional runner until after lockdown. She was a lawyer.
And honestly, it kind of just snowballed. Like, there was no point when I suddenly thought, oh, I'm getting really good. I just kept running.
4 years later, she was representing Great Britain at the Paris Olympics, unknowingly, with a broken leg.
My coach told me to stop. He was like, don't do this. You don't have to do this. It almost felt like I was like watching someone else's race. You were like, this can't be happening. This can't be happening to me.
This is TRC Meets, where we chat to inspirational runners with amazing stories. And this time we are chatting to 2:23 marathoner and Olympian Rose Harvey.
Rose, your last 4 years look like this. Lawyer, lockdown, lone training, redundancy, pro athlete, Olympian, broken leg, marriage. That's a lifetime for most people.
It's been a big 4 years. Yeah, it's definitely been a whirlwind journey. And it's funny because in some ways, 4 years ago when I was working full time and literally running to and from the office, literally seems like a lifetime ago. But at the same time, it's gone so quickly. And just, it literally feels like I've been kind of living in this whirlwind journey. And it's all been so exciting and so fun, but also pretty intense.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's kind of this weird feeling of just that different life back then, which also feels like 2 seconds ago.
So for people who don't know, you were a lawyer, then lockdown hit, and then you transitioned from the outside world very seamlessly into being this elite pro athlete. How did that come about?
I wouldn't entirely say it's seamless, but I'm glad it appears that way. So yeah, I was a corporate lawyer, and I got into running when I moved to London back in 2015. I moved here for law school, and I was basically really unfit and also didn't know that many people in London. So I joined Clapham Chase as a running club.
To get mates.
Basically, yeah. And back then there weren't all these amazing fun running clubs like the Puma Run Club that are very casual. It was kind of the more traditional running clubs. And I joined Chasers because it was the only one that had a social run. I tried to join I actually didn't even get into Belgrave. They said no because they were too serious. And so I joined Chasers social run. And I remember I turned up and I met a friend there and we just really got on. And so I kept going back. But I was like terrified to do the sessions. I gradually built up to do a tempo session. And then I think it was like a good year and a half until I ventured onto the tracks. I was like, that's not for me.
Well, Belgrave are seriously gutted now.
They missed their chance.
And at that stage, did you enjoy it? Or was it still like, oh, this is a good opportunity to meet people, get fit, and the running's kind of just a side hustle?
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I think it was definitely the social element that drew me in and probably kept me in as well. But it's just such a kind of wholesome activity. And I think, at the time I was like early 20s in the city. There's a lot of boozing, partying, and running was like the antidote to that, the kind of healthy social activity I could do. And yeah, I used to love the weekends going on the long runs. I mean, I couldn't do many of the weekday sessions because I was working so late. But the weekends, I loved going out on the Sunday long run and just kind of chatting with people. And it is just such a kind of fun, social, like good activity to do.
Yeah, definitely.
So what's going on in 2020? So lockdowns happened. You're doing this social running at the weekends. You're not too sure where you are with your job. You're 27. You all of a sudden you're running in amazing form, and then you think, right, I'm going to kick this on a bit.
I wasn't. So at the start of lockdown, I really was. I was probably in the worst shape of that previous running block.
Yeah.
My job had really picked up. I moved to a sort of fund in music and law. In music and sport, and it was very, very full on. I loved it. I really enjoyed the job, but it was super intense. And half of my work was out of LA, so I was working literally until like 2 a.m. every day.
But from home, obviously.
No. Well, this was just pre-lockdown. Right. And so I went from
so
that.
It's 5 days in the office live.
5 days in the office. Yeah. And so my running had really gone downhill. Wasn't doing much at all. And then lockdown hit. And I went from working this 100-mile-an-hour job to literally having 3 months, because the company I was working for went basically went insolvent. And so we all got made redundant and had 3 months garden leave. And I had this 3 months off at home, but obviously we couldn't travel, couldn't really do anything fun. So I was like, oh my God, like suddenly what am I going to do with my life? And I think kind of one of my strengths is I'm generally kind of make the most of everything. I'm quite good at like finding opportunities. I was like, right, okay, there has to be an opportunity in this. And I'm just going to do something that is completely different and something I've kind of always thought, oh, maybe I'd like to do it. So I signed up for a half Ironman. And this 3 months, I decided I was going to train like a pro triathlete. Bearing in mind, I had no idea what I was doing. But I was like, it sounds like a good game plan. And then pools closed, and at one point we couldn't even cycle around Richmond Park. So I basically kind of fell into just running a lot. And I'd go down to Battersea, and I used to set myself sessions and just go down with Charlie, my fiance, who at the time could keep up very well. We did these sessions together. And that was when I got spotted by a coach and said he could help me with a bit of structure. And honestly, it kind of just snowballed. Like there was no point when I suddenly thought, oh, I'm getting really good. I just kept running and loved the structure. I think for anyone kind of getting into running, it's, I think a lot of people find it a bit, I don't know, strange to go and get a coach if they're just getting into it. But I think it helps so much with the enjoyment, just having that structure and the accountability and the little goals along the way. And that was really game changing for me and kind of really got me focusing on what I could do and the performance. So at the end of lockdown, I went back into law, had to get another job. But I think it had also just shifted my mentality a bit. I think I'd realised I was in this like crazy job where nothing else existed. It was literally work and nothing else. And my entire social life was there, and there was no time for friends, family, fitness, anything. And I was like, I don't actually want to go back to that. I found something I really enjoy that's actually much better for me and for my both physical and mental health. And I need to keep that in my life. So I purposely took not a step back in my career, but I kind of decided that it wasn't going to be so full on and so 100%.
But did you know then you were going to be a pro athlete?
No. This decision was purely based on kind of lifestyle. Right. And I was like, I need a bit more balance in my life. I had no idea that, I assumed that I would just continue on the same level of
And when you
improved.
started working with the coach, what kind of goals had you set? Like, was it targeting this distance, or was it like breaking a time, or was it just, no, let's keep being more consistent and kind of see how you improve?
My big goal was to run for Surrey. I was like, if I work really hard and maybe I can, cross country I was never very good at, but they had 10K road races. I was like, maybe I could get in for Surrey. So that was the big goal. And I had to say, my coach really early on, he was like, you could run for England. I thought it was absolutely nuts. I was like, you lost the plot, but Surrey's a good goal.
So when did the dream become a reality? When did you turn pro?
I turned pro in 2022. So before that, it was 11 months afterwards, I ran my first proper race since lockdown because there weren't any. So I ran the Cheshire Elite Marathon. And I think that was really the moment I realised the progression I'd made and that I could actually take it more seriously. I ran 2:30:58, 2:31. But that was like a 25-minute PB and kind of put me on the radar as elite level. And off the back of that, that's when I got selected for England. So that was really the start of my trajectory into professional life. But it wasn't until 2022 that I signed with Puma and went pro.
But do you ever take this all in? Because, 2020, you are going to train for a triathlon. You're up till 2 a.m. working in LA.
I think we need to caveat though.
And then 2022, you're an elite runner.
I do think we need to caveat for anyone who's, I don't know if you've seen the stat of people being like 27% of people who have just watched the Paris Olympics think they can make it to LA. You were by no means, like, what was your first marathon time?
2:55 and then
Okay.
3:05. Yeah.
So, you know,
You're pretty useful.
at
Yeah.
what you would
Yeah.
describe your like worst, you're still like a lot of people's 8A goal. And I think that like that natural talent mixed with a coach and then getting selected for
Yeah.
England, did it all sink in after Cheshire Marathon, or were you still like, oh no, I'm not setting another big goal?
I think it started to sink in, but I mean, I never thought about the Olympics at that stage. I didn't even after Cheshire. I think it was just before Cheshire that the trials for Tokyo took place, and I didn't get into that. Like, I wasn't fast enough to get into that. So I thought, okay, yeah, I've obviously improved a lot. I'm on elite start lines. This is incredible. And I mean, it really did feel like just the pinnacle. Like, being selected for England was incredible. And I absolutely loved every minute of that race. I remember just standing on the start line thinking like, oh my God, I cannot believe I'm wearing an England vest.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure I really ever thought about much
More than
beyond that. I mean, in a really nice way, I was actually just really living in that moment,
Yeah.
thinking, oh, this is so cool. But of course, I still had my legal career and I was still balancing all of that. I was working full time at that point. And I don't really ever thought of a possibility of giving that up.
Yeah.
So I always thought I'd have to balance the two somehow.
Isn't that
I mean,
interesting?
that's,
So you were running for England 2022, but you were still going to the office 5 days a week.
yeah,
And not thinking it was a career yet still.
yeah, it was still my hobby.
So
Do you
so-
think that helped you in a way? Because it was like you so kind of weren't taking it for granted that it was kind of just keep chipping away and not this kind of like, oh yeah, well, if I do this, I'll get to here.
Definitely. And I think that still helps me now because running was just my hobby. And I still hold that so closely to me because even on the bad days, and we all have those days where we just don't want to go out, or injuries and
Yeah.
all the kind of lows of the career. And there are so many amazing highs, but there are a lot of lows as well. But I always come back to the fact that I'm still doing my hobby as my job. And that is so
Well, that's
cool.
great, isn't it? It's great.
I'm so lucky.
Yeah.
And I think as well, like, so you've just said there, like the Tokyo trials had happened, then the Tokyo Olympics happened, and then athletes are kind of working in this like 4-year like Olympic cycle. At what point post Tokyo did kind of, okay, let's gear up for the Olympics? Or was it kind of just that was not even on the radar? It was kind of just keep getting faster and see where we can get to.
It was more of an organic process, to be honest. I mean, when at the start of the Paris cycle, I made the World Championship, so I knew I was in that ballpark of being able to. I'd run the qualifying time at
God,
the time.
that was hot. Flipping heck, that was hot.
Yeah, that was hot. So I knew I was kind of up there, but it is. I mean, there's just so many things that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
So of course I was thinking the Olympics would be incredible, but I had so many goals in between that as
Yeah.
well, and I think it's very hard to focus on something that's 4 years away.
But it just seems to me and Sarah Rose that things just happen to you. So 2022, you're going for the London Marathon and you get hit by a car. Like, how do so many things happen to you?
Yeah, it's not a great track record. Although, I mean, all of the other races, I have to say, have gone very smoothly. And illness doesn't seem. I'm pretty lucky with illness, so it just seems
So you
to
got
be the
hit
major
by
event.
a car, and how close was that to London?
10 days out.
Okay, talk us through
Yeah.
the process of going from, because injuries after that, or was it kind of, okay, let's just see whether this is going to work?
With London.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was 10 days out. So it was in the taper. I'd had a really good training block, and it was, I mean, it is amazing what the body can do. And I'm sure we'll come on to Paris, but this is kind of what I held on to in the race, because 10 days before London, I didn't run for that 10 days. It was, my knee was so sore and it had really swollen up and the swelling just wasn't going down properly. So didn't run for 10 days. And even the day before, I couldn't do my strides at all. I was like, this is too painful. But I was at the Elite Hotel, ready to go. And I was literally like, well, I can either start or I cannot start. Those are my two options at the moment because it's not going to get any better. So I might as well just give it a crack. And I might only make it a few miles, but it's better than not trying it. And I woke up the next day, did my warm up, and I was like, I can run. And literally on the start line, I barely felt my knee for the whole race. There were a few moments in the race where I was like, oh, it's twinging. And then it went. And then as soon as I crossed the finish line, it was really painful and I couldn't walk the next day. But it was fine in the race. It really didn't hurt that much.
Wow. And do you think that's like a mental thing of like mixed in with adrenaline and just a like, I will get to the finish line?
Definitely. I mean, it is amazing what race day can do. The adrenaline and pain is a mental thing at the end of the day. And you've got so many distractions on race day. You've got the crowd, you've got so much positive energy. And yeah, it just gets you through. I don't know how the body does it, but it is incredible.
2024, you're chosen to run for Great Britain at the Olympics. Is that the moment all those dreams are like, wow, I've actually made it? I've come true.
It was an incredible moment. Yeah, the run up to it was a bit stressful. I ran my qualifying time in Chicago in October, and then I had to prove fitness in the spring. And I picked up a bit of tendonitis in my knee, which was pretty minor in terms of running injuries, but it was just the worst possible timing. And I had to try and make a half marathon to prove fitness, kept kind of not quite getting there. So kicking it down the line, and I literally managed to race on the deadline. So I went out to this half marathon that was on the deadline for proving fitness. It's like, if I pull it off, I'm in. If I don't, I'm out.
Again, another thing. You scrape
How
in.
do you deal with the pressure of that?
I think it was a lot of pressure, but at the same time, it was almost like all the pressure disappeared because it was so binary at the time. It's like, well, all I can do is my best. And standing on that start line in my half marathon was in Nice. I was just like, well, I know I run best when I enjoy it. So just enjoy it. Just go out there and do my best and have fun. Enjoy running along the seafront in Nice. And actually, it's such a privilege to be in that situation where you even have a shot.
Yeah, it's harder said than done though, isn't it? To tell yourself to enjoy it.
Because
if we could always just
mess.
tell ourselves to enjoy it, then we'd enjoy every run.
Yeah.
But you've got to make it click. You've got to tell yourself. And then internally you have to make it click as well.
I just smile. Honestly, it helps so much. You make yourself
the fake
smile.
smile becomes a real smile.
Definitely.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good trick.
And just remember, it's only running. And I love running.
Yeah.
So I'm going to enjoy it.
Yeah. You weren't loving running the marathon at most parts, though, were you, in the Olympics?
No, I have to say it was a pretty painful process. But having said that, there were still so many moments that I did really enjoy. Not the fact that I was in a lot of pain, that's grim. But that was another thing I came back to. I was just like, soak up the atmosphere. You know, you're at the Olympics. It's so cool. And the crowds were incredible. I have friends and family on the course. So all of that I did really enjoy. And I was able to, high five the crowds and just...
Oh, did you? You high five even when you were in pain?
Yeah, it really helped. I was like, you have to find some joy in it.
Yeah.
Because there's no way you can get through that being miserable. But it's a really long way.
How much pain were you at the beginning? Like, what did you know about what was going on in your leg and your hip? What did your medical team tell you before you started?
Going into the race, I saw a bit of it was only a bit of tightness in my hip a couple of weeks out. And we thought it was just specific inflammation in my hip flexor. I'd been running on trails a lot, done a lot of hill work, and it's a pretty common thing to get when you're doing that kind of volume on the hills. So I was just given some anti-inflammatories and we thought it would settle down, and just with taper and easing off, it would be something that would go away. So on the start line, And actually the week before it was getting a lot better. And I thought it wasn't getting as good as we thought it would do. We thought it would settle down in a week, and it was taking a lot longer. And we're like, oh, it's a bit strange. But there's also there's a lot of stress in the Olympics, and sleep wasn't great. There were lots of things adding in. And so we thought it'll be fine on race day. And I thought it might start to hurt at the end. On that very hilly section, I thought, okay, that's where it's probably going to suffer a bit. And the last 10K might impact me.
Yeah.
But we all thought I had a really good chance of having a really good race. It might be like a few % off my top, but fine.
And how had training gone in the lead up to that? Because obviously you have like a stressful start to the year where you have to demonstrate fitness, you get selected, and then for a lot of from an outside perspective, it's like, woohoo, you're going to the Olympics, and then you kind of forget, oh no, now you need to have to train again because you've got in, and then it's running another marathon. So how had all of the training block gone?
And that's the most frustrating thing, because it had gone so well.
Really?
Really well. I mean, it's always the way. I think as an elite runner, you're riding a line between, and it's such a fine line between being at your peak and just a little bit over that line is getting injured. And you've always got to do it. You've got to push your body to your maximum capability, because that is when you're at your best. And yeah, I really did feel at my best. All my workouts were incredible. I was in front row for 6 weeks, which is just such an amazing place to train in the mountains. And you've got the hills, you've got the trails, everything. There's just such a good setup for training. So it had gone so well. And that was what was the most frustrating thing.
Frustrating, I can imagine.
And it was, people put so much into that performance.
Yeah.
It's not just me, it's my coaches, my physios, S&C coaches, and it's incredible when it goes well. And you're getting fitter, and they're seeing those results every workout and building towards it so well.
Yeah.
So it's just like that last 1% that you've got to do is
Get
the
over
race.
the line. But when you're in that much pain, even though you're in the Olympic marathon, why didn't you quit?
There was there are a few reasons. First of all, as I said, people put so much into it. And I really kind of went into it wanting to do them proud. And I knew my performance was out the window when it started. It started hurting like 3K in. So I knew it was going to be a really hard day out.
Yeah.
And it just kind of got progressively harder and harder. And I fell off the pack. And at that point, I was like, this is going to be really hard, and I'm not going to run the race I wanted to. But there's still something I can do here. And I just don't think, there were lots of points in the race where I genuinely thought I wasn't going to be able to finish. I had to stop a few times. My other issue was because I was running on one leg, that leg was then really cramping, and my ankle started getting sore and really stored up. Yeah. So I was using the ice packs to like ice my hip, then ice my cramping quad. There were a few times I had to stop to stretch out. And my coach told me to stop. He was like, don't do this. You don't have to do this.
Do you remember at what point that was?
I think it was about 12K. So, and he was like, you've got the hills to go. Like, this is only going to go one way.
Where was he speaking to you from?
Oh, he's just on the course.
Right.
So he was like going alongside for, 10 meters saying that. But I just thought, how will I feel if I stop? And I know I would always wondered, could I have run an extra mile?
Yeah.
Like, even if it's a mile. And I think, you're running for GB, you're running for your country, you're running for everyone who's helped you there. And you just have to do everything you can, and you have to do your best. And for me, my best was just getting as far as I could. And that's what it became about. Like, it just became about putting one foot in front of the other for as long as I could. And it wasn't the run I wanted. It was really disappointing. It was heartbreaking to like have that performance, but at least I'm still glad I finished it.
Yeah.
Even though I'm out for 3 months, and I had to caveat this by saying it's not sensible to run. I obviously didn't know it was a stress fracture at the time. It's not sensible to run through injury, and I knew it was bad. Like I knew that kind of pain was not a great pain. But in any other race, I wouldn't have done it. I would have 100% pulled out and just been like, there'll be another day. But it's the Olympics.
Yeah. Have you received a lot of stick because you stayed in?
Yeah, a lot of people think I'm stupid. But I mean, to that, I'd say like try working for 4 years for something, and is that, as I was saying, it's that last 1%. Like see what you would do to do that last 1% when so many people put so much into it. Like see what lengths you would do to just finish it.
Especially when you've spent so long. I'm guessing like a big part of training is like visualizing how it's going to go. And then it was a big part of the race as well, having like this picture of what you thought that day would be, and then kind of battling through a totally different reality.
And that was the hard bit. And it was really, you just kind of feel your goals like slipping through your fingers. And it is the worst feeling. It kind of felt like, it almost felt like I was like watching someone else's race. You were like, this can't be happening. This can't be happening to me. You know, I pitched it so many times in training when I was doing those long runs, thinking, you know, this is how it's going to feel. And the reality was just so different.
Well, people knew something was up if you were watching the women's marathon at the Olympics. Like Sarah and I were watching, and we were thinking, where's Rose? But then we saw that you were still in the race. So we knew something was up. But like you say, you were high-fiving people on the way around. So we weren't quite sure exactly what was up. And the fact that you finished, you know, I think I can understand, you know, why you stuck it out and continued, even though you knew you were getting married 3 weeks later.
I'm not going to lie, the fact the crutches and the wedding didn't really enter the headspace at that time.
I was just going to ask as well, like, so preparing for the Olympic marathon, I feel like is cruel in the sense of that they're not making it like a flat world major. It's unlike any race that probably an athlete has gone into in order to qualify for the Olympics. How hard is that mentally when you're preparing? Because you know what you can run on the flat. Chicago, you had a phenomenal race. And then to go into a training block for a marathon that's really hot, loads of hills.
Yeah.
Like there was even
Hills
talk.
like this.
Yeah, there was even talk before. I think someone was joking, but like Andy was chatting to a couple of people where he was like, "Yeah, some elites might need to walk that like that super steep
15%
one."
gradient.
Which how do you prepare for that? And do you, in your preparation, were you thinking of like a goal pace or a goal time, or is it literally just race with the pack and see what happens?
I really enjoyed the challenge, and the training was so different. But I think for me, it was actually really refreshing to have that, because the only marathons I'd done before were to hit a time, and you're so focused on just hitting the same split every mile. And I think if I'd have had that kind of marathon to go into, I'd have been a bit bored. And I'm not sure I could have like geared myself up in the same way for it, because it's just a bit repetitive. And having a completely different challenge, getting better on the hills, the ups and the downs, learning to deal with the heat, really just brought these different elements to training that were really fun.
I love this. Sarah, all I'm hearing from Rose is if there's not a 15% gradient, it's boring.
I'm not doing it. I need the hills. But do you think that helped on the day as well? Because you didn't have this like metronomic, because I've had it before in races where like maybe you miss a split that you've had like so locked into your head. But actually, because the route was so up and down, but you just maybe looking at your watch being like, fine. We've got a
I
hill
didn't
coming
even
up.
look at my watch. Really? And I think, that's something with championship racing as well. It's really not, no one there is really going for a time. It's all about placing. And so the start, you just kind of run with the pack. And there's not really much point going way off in front, even if it is slower than what you can run, because you're going to end up just getting caught.
Yeah.
So you might as well just stay with the pack, save energy and race tactically. And that was my race plan. I thought I could go for top 10. We were pretty confident that if I had a good day, you never know what everyone else is going to do. So it's hard to say, but that was my goal. And it felt like a realistic one.
Well, your Chicago time would have put you in 5th on the winning. time.
Although of
in
course
Paris.
Chicago is significantly flatter and
Yeah,
cooler.
but, but you
it
don't
has
mind
that one
You
hill
don't
at the
mind that.
end.
You don't mind. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that felt
Yeah.
like Everest, I tell you, at the
Yeah,
end of
yeah.
Chicago.
So before you go, what's next for Rose Harvey?
Well,
Apart from sorting your leg out, getting married,
yeah.
whatever else life throws at you.
The imminent goal is the wedding. The longer term goal is, I think, with this and the year that I've had, I want to take it sensibly. I want to make sure I recover properly from this injury. It should heal absolutely fine. Luckily, there's apparently a good side to have a stress fracture on your femur and a bad side, and I've got it on the good side. So I'm taking that win. So it should heal fine, but I've got to be careful coming back and be sensible with it. I've got a great team around me who are really strict on my timings and no running. So it'll probably be about 3 months until I can start again. And then I'm just going to build up slowly. And 2025 is going to be the comeback.
Yeah.
Nice. And are you even thinking about 2028 right now? Or is it just keep progressing, see what happens?
Definitely. I mean, if anything, this has made me hungrier for 2028.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, come with us. Come and do the pod with us out in LA as well.
Okay. Hopefully it'll be a great race.
Yeah.
And then we can do the pod and celebrate.
I think what's incredible as well is going from a full-time lawyer working to 2 a.m.
Yeah.
trying to make it with a lifetime goal being to run for Surrey, and now the hungry ambition to be top 10 at the Olympics just shows that like diligence, determination, and like we are so behind you because your story is phenomenal and I can't wait to see what you do next.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Rose.
Thanks for having me.